What is going on, guys? Welcome to Daily Roto Sharks Live. I am your host, Evan Cheney, and what a time to be alive. Football season is back, ready to go for DFS purposes and whatnot, and I am joined today by xBenJamminx and Josh Minneapolis Ace. How you doing today, guys?
Good.
Good. What's going on? We're glad to be back. NFL, let's get it started.
Man, I've been waiting for this since, man, when was the Super Bowl? February?
Too long. Too long.
I don't know. There's something about football, just sitting on my couch all day, doing nothing but watching football, ignoring responsibility. It's the adrenaline rush.
But
Nothing better, man.
All right, all right. Well,
So,
we have a beautiful slate of games to talk about for this week. We have some awesome tournaments going on throughout the industry. We have the Millionaire Maker on DraftKings at that $3 price point. Has a hella ton of entries. The Sunday Million on FanDuel. Just a bunch of tournaments just throughout the industry that are worth playing. And, I'm really just pumped to get into this slate. So, guys, any thoughts before we get started here?
first of all, I'd like to welcome Josh. Thanks for coming on with us, buddy. Minneapolis Ace. If you guys don't know, Josh is the two-time $100,000 winner, and very recently. So thanks for coming on with us, Josh. And Evan, thank you very much for hosting these weekly podcasts for us, and it's going to be great moving forward.
Yes, I'm just pumped to be on live on air talking football. It's just great. Um, yeah, so how about we just dive into these games here? We'll be going on a position by position basis for our analysis of the slates here. So let's just start at quarterback. One of the more important. All the positions are important in fantasy, but quarterback is definitely an important position to look at here. And I'm looking at some cash game plays to start out. Dak Prescott is a guy who everyone is going to be talking about. Obviously, with the Tony Romo injury in the preseason, Dak Prescott was mispriced at 5K. So, he's definitely going to be looked at a lot in cash and GPPs. What do you guys think of Dak Prescott for Week 1?
Want to take it away, Josh?
I don't play cash, but I feel he's going to be super chalky there. He's going to have pretty high ownership in your 50-50s, and I would assume heads up. I don't think it's terrible for the price. Of course, you want to get 3x return there, but if you want to differentiate yourself, I think there's some other good options as well, a little up the price ladder.
Absolutely, I completely agree. And the one thing that we're going to see is at the $5,000 price point, anyone who's sharp at all will be on him. Now, if you look at the general public, a lot of people may try to work their way around, but we know that salary is very important, and that price definitely stands out. So, Evan, what do you think? Number 2, who would be your second guy you would look at quarterback in cash?
Well, I would definitely look at Aaron Rodgers for cash games. The Jacksonville Jaguars defense has improved slightly over the offseason. However, I don't think they stop Aaron Rodgers too much this week. I don't know. He looks really strong. I know he has an $8,500 price point on DraftKings, but the situation just looks really right for him. The implied Vegas total for the Green Bay Packers is on the rise. They're up to a 4.5-point spread. I just really like the spot for Aaron Rodgers this week in both cash and GPPs.
Yeah, not being a game guy myself, when I look at the prices, especially on DK, I like Stafford a lot there, and a great spot as well. I think that's going to be a pretty highly targeted game there, but I think he's would be a pretty safe cash play. I feel.
Yeah, I
I
feel
agree.
I feel the exact same way. Um, I don't know, the line in that game. I don't want to focus too heavily on Vegas early on in the season, but the line in that game has made some intriguing moves toward the Detroit Lions ever since Vontae Davis was ruled out. for an indefinite period of time due to the ankle. So, yeah, I mean, definitely Matthew Stafford is worth a very good look this week in both cash and GPP. Another guy I want to talk about, well, a whole game that I do want to discuss here is Oakland Raiders against New Orleans Saints. Both Derek Carr and Drew Brees look to be in fantastic spots this week against very poor defenses. I don't know. What do you guys think about this matchup?
I'll take it. I think it's very interesting that you said that because, like what I did is I gave out these sheets before we started, and I listed positions and cash plays and GPP plays, and for me, my three plays were Dak Prescott, Aaron Rodgers, Derek Carr. So whether we're just really on the same page or they're all going to be super chalky, I really feel like there's really no reason to get away from those guys in cash.
Yeah, they should definitely. Yeah, they should definitely be in your core as far as your cash game core. I mean, you don't want to deviate too much from any one position in cash games. But if those are your three top quarterbacks, though, they should be your three top quarterbacks for cash games this week. Josh, I know you're more of a GPP-esque guy, so just rattle off some of your top quarterback plays in tournaments for week one as possibly like a pivot off of a guy like Dak Prescott, even Aaron Rodgers, Derek Carr, who seem to be very chalky this week going in.
Well, I think the first quarterback you have to look at after Dak would be Eli. I think he has 3 touchdown potential and has that 300-yard, passing game that can get you that bonus on DK. And he's definitely someone I'd want exposure to, to be on the opposite side of the ball because I feel Dak's, ownership percentage might be leaning 20, 25%. It's hard to tell, but it's someone I'm really interested in. I don't know why, but I am interested in Winston as well. I usually don't think much as a player, but I feel it's a good matchup where they could be throwing back and forth. I think Winston won't pick on the Trufant side, but it's something interesting as well to me. And like I said earlier, Stafford, and I like Carr as well. So that's where I'm kind of leaning with some of these guys. But I think in order to differentiate yourself in some of these GPPs this weekend, you might have to be the contrarian angle might be to spend up at quarterback.
Yep.
Yeah,
I
definitely. Yeah, I definitely like your Eli Manning analysis there.
Who do you stack with? Would you go? I mean, I know we'll get to the wide receivers, but would you go just the wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2, or both?
Well, how I'm breaking down my 150 lineups, I'll do like 1/3 stacks, 1/3 naked, and 1/3 maybe 3-guy stacks, or maybe some 4. Not quite as much, but with him, you definitely want to pair him with Beckham. But I can see myself rolling naked stacks there, Eli as well.
Okay, yeah, because you really never know who he's going to throw to. You could get like a Will Tide 2-touchdown game or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was actually about to say Will Tye, but at the same time, David Tyree came to my head for some reason. For whatever reason, I thought David Tyree is Will Tye.
Super Bowl.
No, they're nowhere near the same person.
No.
But yeah, I mean that's definitely a stack worth looking at. I mean, we can discuss these positions further on down in the show. When we talk about those positions. But yeah, that stack with the Giants and Eli Manning looks to be in very prime position this week. I don't know, a crazy name that I'm thinking of is Robert Griffin III for tournaments. RG3.
Ooh.
I know this is going to be very controversial throughout the industry, and whoever's watching this is probably discrediting me at 7 Ways to Sunday. But I do have an argument for him. He's a mobile quarterback. He has some receiving options now. I mean, he has Corey Coleman, who, if you ever watched him play football at all, is just a monster.
Yep.
And he has Gary Barnage to go to, which we all saw what Gary Barnage was doing last year.
Don't forget Terrell Pryor.
Yeah, I always forget about Terrell Pryor. I still think he's at Ohio State sometimes. I really do.
I mean, he's actually pretty decent. He's actually pretty decent as a receiver. He's an athlete, man.
Yeah, I don't knock him at all.
I got one for you. I don't think many people are gonna be on the stack, and I'm certainly gonna shoot it out a couple of spots. Kirk Cousins, Deshaun Jackson, Jordan Reed. I think that is gonna be high upside, low owned.
I mean,
Yeah,
it won't. Yeah, I mean, that won't apply for our millionaire maker, but yeah, I mean, that definitely can work out on FanDuel, where the slate allows, and definitely for like the Thursday start contest
Yeah.
on DraftKings. That stack actually seems very sneaky, something no one's going to think of because a lot of people aren't thinking about the Monday game or the Monday games, I should say, at
Mhm.
all.
Right.
So yeah,
Exactly.
I mean, I can totally back that stack up.
I like Wentz on the other side of the ball as well, just because he's actually a mobile quarterback too.
Well,
No,
they're playing Pittsburgh.
no, Wentz from Philly playing Browns.
Oh, the Browns against RG3.
Oh,
Yeah,
Carson,
Oh,
Carson.
right, yeah.
I
Yeah,
can,
no.
yeah.
I have a very hard time trusting trusting Wentz. I don't know why. I don't know why. I feel better you like with a Dak Prescott type, someone I know is going to be on the move a little bit,
well, he
but
was kind of mobile in college as well. He was a deceptive, sneaky type rusher, and for the same price as Dak, if you're rolling out your 150 lineups, I think getting exposure to him doesn't hurt, and pairing him with Ertz or something.
right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cause me, like I can never go with Jordan Matthews. I've watched him drop too many balls.
I
Yeah, I want Ryan Matthews there or Ertz really, and maybe if I'm rolling Matthews and I'm pairing it with the Eagles D, something like that.
Right.
yeah, I mean, as a Philadelphia sports fan, I would love to ramble on about Carson Wentz all day and
So
just
with that
every
said,
I I I mean, this show can last for 3 hours at that point, so I think it's better off for us to just start talking about some running backs before
Ooh,
before I implode of just internalized anger. Anyway, all right. So looking at some of these running backs now, um, there's definitely some guys that jump off the page right off the bat. Um, David John, just looking at some of these higher priced options that can be used, in my opinion, for both cash and GPP, just for their abilities to have high floors and high ceilings. David Johnson is probably my favorite running back of the week, regardless of the owner. Like not factoring in ownership too much. He's just my favorite running back of the week. Goes up against a New England Patriots defense who, I mean, they haven't really changed that much, but I do feel like having Jimmy Garoppolo at quarterback kind of changes the dynamic of their entire game plan, both offensively and defensively going into this game.
Do you kind of worry though that Belichick likes to take away the opposing team's shiny new toy,
I
and
am.
then this could turn into a timeshare maybe with the two Johnsons? That's what I worry about with Belichick. I don't think they're too concerned about Fitzgerald. I like David Johnson; he was great at Northern Iowa, but I worry sometimes Belichick's main focus is to shut down the best player on the opposing teams. But I think it's a great play, and not a lot of people will be spending up to that.
No, I mean, yeah, I mean, I agree with that thought, just because there is a ton of value this week at the running back position in some of the guys I'll talk about in a second here. Um, but I feel like, spending up at running back is one of the better ways to be contrarian this week, especially with some of I mean, David Johnson is probably going to be the
Well, you
highest
talking
owned.
cash? You talking GPP?
This is both. I mean, again, these are guys that have high ceilings and high floors,
All right,
so
because I kind of agree with Josh's assessment, just that Belichick likes to take away the star of the squad. And while I don't necessarily think that it's going to be a running back by committee, I think David Johnson will still dominate the carries and the snaps. But I think they're just going to want to air the ball out. That's what you usually see with the New England game, unless they're playing the Colts or they just run the ball down their throat. But I think we'll see is Carson Palmer airing it out to John Brown, Michael Floyd, and hitting, Fitz underneath, and then you'll have David Johnson kind of taking everything else. But I think the focus will be to shut down Johnson. So for me, at that price, he becomes less of a strong cash play, but I can certainly see some merit in using him.
Definitely. So yeah, so David Johnson is someone that we like there, or that at least I like to an extent. Ezekiel Elliott's another guy. He's priced. I mean, he's a rookie, not having played a game yet in his career, or a real game. Um, Ezekiel Elliott, though, at 7,300, I can definitely get behind the play if you do want to, get some pivot ideas off of David Johnson. Because, like I said before, David Johnson's probably going to be one of the higher owned cash and running back or GPP running backs on this slate of games. So Ezekiel Elliott might be one of your best chances to kind of pivot off of a guy like David Johnson. I do like the matchup against a weak Giants defense, and if they can stop Dak Prescott, I think they're going to have to give some of the opportunities to Ezekiel Elliott.
I think it's just a great way to pivot from Dak itself if you don't want to, fight everybody else who has Dak. Just rolling with him or getting exposure to Witten. I think a lot of people will be on Dez and Dak. So, I mean, you're definitely spending up for Ezekiel Elliott, but I don't think it's wrong to do so.
So would you, because there's going to be a lot of people on one or the other, but do you think there will be people running both in cash?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not a cash game guy, so I'll defer to you.
Right. Okay, so we'll keep the GPP questions tailored to Josh. I think so. I think people will run both. I think there's certainly value there. And with the offensive line, I think anyone can really do well. Dak for me needs to throw a touchdown to Dez and maybe run one in, and then I think that Elliott could also have a floor of a touchdown. But
certainly, I fully agree with you there.
I love Latavius Murray. I think that he is a stud in the making. I think at his price, at least on FanDuel, if we're talking DraftKings, then I think I'd move a little bit more towards D'Angelo Williams. But on FanDuel, I just love Latavius Murray. I think that in a shootout, he's going to get tons of touches. There'll be plenty of chances to punch him in on the goal line. So he's someone I'm looking at for FanDuel, and then for DraftKings, I love players like D'Angelo Williams and Devontae Freeman, who have that high floor, but will also are guaranteed some PPR targets.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. Latavius Murray is definitely going to be a higher owned back, but at that price point, I think you got to eat the chalk at that point, just because he's just so good. And if the Raiders, go ahead.
I said he would have been a lot more chalky before the Jamal Charles news and with some of the Rawls news, but he will be higher owned.
Right. So, I mean, with that said, I think we need to shout out a couple of guys who are at least going to be higher owned, so people understand. You're going to have Spencer Ware. He's someone filling in for Jamal Charles. You're going to have Christine Michael. He's going to be coming in for Thomas Rawls. And you have Terrence West, who's going to be starting, but who knows about that running back by committee. But those are some cheap guys who, with injury news and other news, are going to be at the forefront of a lot of people's lineups.
Exactly. I don't know, some other names. I mean, yeah, Spencer Ware is a name that a lot of people are going to be on. But again, at that 4,400 price point, definitely a guy worth eating the chalk for. Duke Johnson, one of my cash game plays that I like. I'm not too keen on him in tournaments, but Duke Johnson is definitely a guy of 5,100 who I like as a cash game play. Decent, he does get a decent production in terms of opportunities, in the form of carries and whatnot. Going up against the Eagles, even my Eagles, I don't even know how they're going to be performing against the run this year. So I definitely like him as a cash game play a lot, just because I know the opportunities are going to be there for him.
One thing I'd like to mention, and this isn't about the plays themselves, but about roster construction. there's going to be so much value in week 1, and I'm more of a cash game guy of my career, and I'm trying to get more towards GPP. So, Josh, I'd love your opinion on these, but roster construction wise, there's going to be so much value that people are going to be able to pay up very easily. So, you slide your Prescott in, you slide your, we'll talk about other values later, but you slide your Duke Johnson in or whatever it is, and you get those cheap guys, you're going to be able to get the very high priced wide receivers and the high priced running backs. So I think to be contrarian in terms of GPP, instead of going the high-low that everyone's going to be doing, is to kind of go even across the board and find those tiered ranges, like the second and third ranges that you think are going to be undervalued instead of just eating the chalk right away. What do you think, Josh?
I think, dropping down from, sprinkling in some of those top name guys, but also dropping down, to like the Alshons or Marshalls and, Watkins and guys like that. I think
and high upside guys.
Yeah, putting some of those guys in, but you could also dip down to, Marvin Jones is going to be chalky and like Crabtree, but if you sprinkle some of those guys in, you can get some of those mid-range guys, some of the lower tier and the upper tier. What I've been playing around with is, going with a higher end running back and then, putting in a Ware or something like that to try to find some balance, but, make things a little different because all the other sharp players are going to use Dak and see these value plays as well and be able to go up. And if they're doing that, a lot of other people will be. So I want to target some of the mid-tier guys.
Yeah, one of the more contrarian moves that I see in this chat here. Ben, you're drinking Capri Suns, bud.
Yeah. Yeah,
very powerful move right there. I don't remember the last time I even had one of those.
I'm a throwback kind of guy, man. I really am.
I guess it's like some kind of that '90s nostalgia, just being thrown.
I don't have a CD in my car that's newer than 2008. Put it that way. I'm a throwback.
I like it. I like it a lot. I have to say, just because I'm getting tired of some of 2016's great wonders.
I can't deal with it.
So you know what? It's time for 2008 and before again. All right. Moving on to our next position here. Unless you guys have any other notes on the running back position, I'd like to start talking about some running or wide receivers here.
Real quick, one thing I do want to mention, and he for some reason is just popping up on my radar as a potential play. Here, let me get the video. Ryan Matthews. I never really used him much when he was in San Diego. He was always in some kind of committee, but it really seems like he has hold of the running back spot in Philly, and you're going to be against Cleveland. They're always porous in whatever type of offense you throw out there. So I think he's going to be underutilized in both cash and GPPs this week.
Yeah, it's very, I don't know, just Ryan Matthews. I see his name popping up a lot around the industry. Not as like a definite play, but just a guy to consider. And I really do think that Ryan Matthews is a guy to consider this week. If I am going to pick an Eagles running back, I'd rather go to Darren Sproles, pairing him with the Eagles defense, just because I like that kick return upside. Yeah, I want that double dip there.
That's understood.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't trust Ryan Matthews that much.
I don't, but I'm saying, like, I think he's going to be underused this week, and he always has the potential for a few catches and a couple of breakout runs where you don't really need too much from him in most cases. So.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Go ahead, Josh.
He's a good balance of where, running the ball and getting some catches as well. I have a lot of interest in him, and I don't like admitting it because he's so Jekyll and Hyde and he gets banged up easily, but he's someone I'm really interested in this week, and just to kind of be different. I see merit in taking him, and it's Cleveland too. So if you fail versus them, you probably shouldn't be in the NFL.
Right, throw some pads on me and give me a minimum ranking and a minimum price, and I'll get value.
Ben, I'm seeing those football highlights of yours. I saw them on YouTube. I'll
That's it,
get
man.
behind that. I want that at the 3K
Nostalgia.
min. I want you at 3K min price then.
Oh, PPR all day.
Oh yeah.
All right, so yeah, let's move on to our receivers.
Yeah, so we can get some of our wide receivers here. Um, but the lo and behold, top play here in terms of price, almost at 10K. Julio Jones just pops out mightily in so many different ways, going up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this week. Just a side note of that game in general, I think that's one of the sneakier games that you can get behind. Defenses are not that good in this game, and the offenses have some power. They have some power to them. So this game does have a lot of sneaky upside that I don't think people are discussing that much.
One
But
thing I read today, Evan, I read that the cornerbacks for Tampa Bay, the one who's going to be on Julio Jones, it's going to be his first game in the league.
and I mean, if you're covering Julio Jones your first game in football, it's quite a task.
Yeah,
I would
like
imagine.
once I saw that, it was like kind of like lock him in, you know.
Yeah, Julio Jones is no matter regardless of the ownership in GPPs, I I just can't fade him. I don't know. I just can't find a way to fade him. Josh, how do you feel about Julio Jones this week?
I like him. I just worry about sometimes the the upside of the touchdowns. I want to get a guy with 2 touchdown potential. Yeah, he has that, but jump ball situation, things like that. I don't see a lot of that. It's kind of catch a pass and run it in, a long route or something like that. I definitely like him from the PPR aspect, but sometimes worry about his quarterback to get him that 2 touchdown to pay off that price.
Yeah,
Can I tell
go
you
ahead.
something real quick? Read off a stat from our cheat sheet. So
Go ahead.
Julio Jones talking about he's a yards after catch kind of guy. He was number 3 in the league last year with yards at the catch. So he had 136 catches and he had 1192 yards at the catch. So that means where you catch the ball, like if you run a 10-yard hook and that's where you catch it, that's 10 yards at the catch. And then once you run after that, that's after catch, of course. So he led the league in yards after catch with 679. The next guy was Antonio Brown with 587, but he was still number 3 in yards at the catch. So the touchdown, the upside wasn't there last year, but for me, I see some positive regression, especially since he's still up there like crazy in just total yards.
Yeah, definitely. If the targets will obviously be there for Julio Jones. So, his yards at the catch and his yak yards after the catch are definitely going to be up there. Moving on to like some of the other receivers here. If you do want to pivot off of Julio Jones, because obviously I don't think you can be rostering 2 9K receivers on your team unless you just I don't know what you do with the rest of your team. But Odell Beckham Jr. I know we were talking about Eli Manning before, especially you, Josh. You really like the stack here with Eli and Odell Beckham Jr. So I want to have you talk about just why you're gonna like this stack this week on the receiver side.
Well, I like this because you're paying up a little more. Dez is going to be fairly popular, and you're paying up a little more for Beckham, and he always has that 2 touchdown potential. And Dallas's defense just isn't very good this year. I could see them getting out to a lead, a bigger lead in the first half, and running a lot of Jennings and stuff in the second. But Beckham, I just think paying up for him, you know, is just a sharp play as well as Julio. But I like Beckham's upside a little more than Julio, I guess, because I trust the quarterback more.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely a very good thought. Um, I don't know, I mean Eli Manning is a somewhat better quarterback for fantasy in my mind than Matt Ryan, especially this week in the matchup. So I fully agree with what you're saying, Ben. What What else do you see in some of these receivers at that higher price tag that, catches your eye?
Okay, so I think everybody is just going to be on Antonio Brown. He's the number one. He's the guy who destroyed everyone last year. So let's just throw him out of the window like he's Coors Field, right? Let's just assume everyone's going to flock to him if they're not going to Julio. I really think DeAndre Hopkins, he's shown that he doesn't need a good matchup. He doesn't need a good quarterback. He just needs a ball in the air. I think going against Chicago, um, where Houston they have Lamar Miller, but they don't have a great running game, and we see DeAndre Hopkins. He gets around 10 targets a game, so I think at the lower price of a $900 cheaper than Antonio Brown, $600 cheaper than Julio, I think that he's just such a stud that he really can do anything in any opportunity. So I'd rather have him over who's Amari Cooper, who's even cheaper, but he's going to have Delvin Breaux. And I think people are going to flock to Amari Cooper because they see the Saints. So I think in this range over here, I'd rather pay up to Hopkins than go down to that kind of cash target who people are going to try to pair with Derek Carr.
Yeah, the only problem I have with Nuke this week, or just in general for this season compared to last, I think Will Fuller might take some. I mean, he's definitely going to take some targets away from Nuke. So I don't know. I don't know if I like DeAndre Hopkins as much. I kind of want to see how that works out in a game first before I want to roster him. Although at the same time, that's probably what a lot of people are going to do. So that might not be the best tournament
And let me
strategy.
throw out a GPP one here that for some reason I'm just gravitating to in my lineups this week. Sammy Watkins. I think his upside is just so tremendous, and that's not going to be a highly looked at game. They're not projected to score a lot of points, but he gets a really good matchup, and we know that he really is a boomer bust guy. So he can get you 2 touchdowns on only a few targets.
Exactly. I mean, I fully agree with you there, Josh. Any guy that we haven't talked about here in that mid to higher price range in wide receivers that you kind of like for tournaments this week?
Well, the guys I'll be targeting for sure, I'm pretty heavy on AJ Green. I mean, that wide receiver core isn't as good as it used to be with Jones gone and Sanu and Tyler Eifert out. That I think it's just going to be a ton of targets for Green. I'm not too scared about Rivas and some of the corners there with the Jets. So I like him a lot. And moving down the scale some, I see Chicago being down in that game, so I want some pieces of Alshon as well. And opposite of AJ, I'm definitely interested in Marshall because he gets a lot of jump balls, in the end zone there. And also going down some Cobb with Jordy Nelson back and healthy. Cobb's numbers actually go up some. He averages about 5 more fantasy points. So I like him a lot. And, you can go down to Cooper, but I think he'll be fairly chalky. And Watkins could be to an extent, but yeah, I like him as well because he can get you that 5 for 140 and 2 touchdowns.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Evan, I think that went kind of smooth with Josh just naming off his 3 guys, like giving the guy explanation, guy explanation, guy explanation. So if we could keep that format, I think that'll be an easier way than just jumping back and forth.
I fully agree with you. It's a beautiful thought.
All right, cool. So you want to give a couple of cash, couple of GPP thoughts?
Yeah, for cash games, um, yeah, I mean, a lot of the guys we mentioned before, Julio, Odell, DeAndre, Brandon, those guys, um, definitely great for cash. Someone I also like for cash that we haven't mentioned a whole lot, Jarvis Landry at 6K on DraftKings. I really like him in the matchup. Um, I know people are going to get scared off the idea that, it's the Seattle Seahawks. Oh no, I don't want to play. No. See, here's the thing with the Seahawks. As long as Jarvis Landry is playing in the slot like he should be, Seahawks can't defend slot wide receivers.
No, that's
So,
been that way for a few years now.
yeah.
just the middle of the field in general. That's why even tight ends have success against them.
Yeah, which is why I really like Jarvis Landry for cash this week. I never really like him for tournaments because he doesn't have, the highest amount of upside in the world. He doesn't have that two touchdown game possibility in him. But he has, especially on a full PPR site like DraftKings, um, you know, he's going to be targeted many times in this game by Ryan Tannehill, who just seems to always just look at Jarvis, whether the route or whether the play dictates him, making Jarvis the primary receiver or not. So definitely Jarvis Landry is a guy worth playing in cash. And, I want to go a little lower on the price scale here when it comes to one of my favorite tournament plays that no one is talking about. Um, Vincent Jackson at 4.4K. One of the most volatile wide receivers you will ever see. But at the same time, again, easy matchup seemingly against the Atlanta Falcons in a game that I think is going to be a shootout. And I think if you do a quarterback, two wide receiver stack with Jameis Winston, Mike Evans, Vincent Jackson, I think you give yourself a really good possibility to win some tournaments this week.
It's very interesting.
Yeah, I guess with Evans, he scares me a little more. Just looking at his matchups the first few weeks, he's got some of the toughest corners on him, this year, and I think Jackson will. I'm hoping he steps it up because he has big play potential, and you want that from your second wide receiver. We saw those in the days when he was in San Diego, but Evans, I'm not as he scares me some with the hands and not having the touchdowns last year, but just as matchup wise, I think that's a good pivot if people are going to be on Evans.
Definitely
Right,
for
so let
sure.
me just rattle off a couple here. So I like Crabtree at 6.1 for cash. I think is a great alternative. People are going to be on Cooper, and he has Delvin Breaux on him. Um, let's see. I like Marvin Jones in cash for 5.5, and I'm looking at FanDuel right now, so pricing wise. Um, and yeah, I really like Landry, just because like they'll get him the PPR points. I think he can score a touchdown, but I don't like the upside. I think I'd rather at that price this week. I'd rather go with Dante Moncrief for 300 cheaper, or Sterling Shepard at 5,600. When it comes to GPP plays, I think that Steve Smith is playing, right? He's good to go for week one.
Yep.
Okay, I think
Yep.
that not enough people are going to be on him, and I'm certainly going to get a piece. The Ravens threw the ball the most in the league last year, so they were really on top of launching it down the field. We've seen Flacco air it out more now than ever in his career, so I like that there. Um, we haven't talked about Allen Robinson. He's 8.5. I don't think people are going to pay up for him at all. With the other receivers in that range, you have Jordy Nelson, you have Hopkins, and for a little bit more, you can get Julio. So I think Allen Robinson, a guy who has such big play potential, and he had 12 of his 14 touchdowns last year in the red zone. So he's a guy that can score, and he has big play potential. And then one more is let's see.
I think one guy who's usually reliable, and like I said, I don't play cash, but Macklin for the Chiefs. Smith is not going to throw it a lot, but when he does, he targets him a lot. So I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong there, cash game wise, but he's usually generally safe, I would think.
Yeah, yeah. San Diego's not great against the wide receiver. They're okay, but yeah, I could certainly see that. And like I said before, with the Kirk Cousins stack, I like Deshaun Jackson for GPPs.
Yeah, I
So,
mean
oh, one
those
thing to mention, I couldn't let us get off of wide receivers without mentioning him. I don't have to say anything behind it, but Tajay Sharp.
Oh man, I
Tajay
love me
Sharp.
some Tajay.
I really want him to do well.
I'm not a homer, but those Vikings corners are pretty decent, and I think a lot of people in the industry are talking about Sharp right now. So it could be decent to go the opposite of Sharp. Why am I blanking on his name right now? Is the other guy on the other side, Sharp
Matthews.
Matthews,
Sharp, yeah.
Because I think Sharp's going to be very, very chalky, just because you can do some really good things with your lineups, being able to move up. So I don't think that it's. I actually think that it's good to maybe get some exposure to Matthews as well, since Sharp's ownership could be pretty high.
Game Theory 101, ladies and gentlemen.
I mean, this guy won like $200,000 somehow, right?
Hey man, I didn't argue with that. I definitely like it. I see it. I just love Tajay Sharp. I have him on every season long, and I just wanted to mention his name. I didn't want to leave wide receivers without mentioning him.
No, I think, and prior in that price range, there's a few guys that I like between the 4K and going down to some of those other prices. Guys I like there were Michael Thomas for New Orleans. He'll probably be playing the slot a lot, which I think is he'll benefit from, because those Oakland corners are pretty decent. Fuller, I heard a little blurb today that he was banged up, so I don't know the extent of the injury. Tyler Boyd for sure, opposite of AJ Green. I mean, playing the slot there, and you're getting great value on him. I think he's someone to keep an eye on as well.
Yeah, he's being looked at a lot. Him and Josh Doxson were getting a lot of noise. So coming out of college.
Yeah, I don't know. I think Doxson's shut down right now, but that's but Boyd, I mean, they don't really have anyone to throw to there in Cincy.
Eifert's hurt.
Yeah, so I think if you're not going AJ, maybe you get some pieces of Boyd and get someone up near AJ.
Nice, I like it. I love AJ Green. Like you said, there's really no one else there. He's gonna get peppered with targets, so I think that'll actually be a pretty low-owned stack in general, the three of those guys. If you go Dalton, who regular season he plays very well. People are never on him. And then you got the AJ Green and Tyler Boyd. So not only is that going to be contrarian, but you're going to get some value there as well.
Exactly. Very good thoughts there on the wide receivers. A lot of guys to play in, who you can separate as both cash and GPP plays this week for your wide receivers. So I don't know. There's just a lot to think about there for wide receiver this week for week 1. Moving on here, we have our tight ends. The one guy here, highest price on both sites by far, Rob Gronkowski at $7,400. I'm not going to be on him personally, just because the price is way too high on him for production that we really can't guarantee with a quarterback in Jimmy Garoppolo. What do you guys think about him for this week?
I think that, if you faded Gronk last year, you saved yourself a lot of money, because he was priced at wide receivers, type tier pricing at times. I'm a little interested in him in week 1, just because not seeing a lot of Garoppolo, that he could be a safety blanket type guy, him and Edelman and White, some short dump offs, because, he's not a rookie, Garoppolo, but their best friends are usually the tight ends. So, I have some interest, and I think that's going to be kind of contrarian, because I think if you're playing the Thursday slate to get the exposure to the Monday night hammer games, Reed's going to be fairly popular there.
Exactly. Yeah, I just wanted to get the Rob Gronkowski point in there, just because I definitely can't. I mean, you can kind of he has the safety in him somewhat in Gronk, because he does have the highest floor of any tight end on a week in, week out basis. So you can make the argument of him being somewhat of a cash game play and then somewhat of a tournament play. But I don't know. It's just way too risky for me. In terms of some of these cash game plays, speaking of them, a guy I like at, for a cash game is Jason Witten. Um, he's probably my favorite cash game only tight end this week. He does have a high floor, does get a good amount of targets. I mean, Tony Romo's not throwing him the ball this week, or for some time, but I have to imagine that Jason Witten's going to be getting some targets this week.
Yeah, and he usually, plays pretty well versus the Giants. I like him a lot. He's not going to burn you with speed or whatever. He's just kind of consistent, and when he's getting older here, so I do like Witten. I think Dak might be scrambling at times because he's going to see blitzes he's never seen before. So dump offs to Zeke and Witten, makes sense here.
I agree with that, definitely. What about Evan? You want to roll off some cash plays, some GPP plays, then Josh, and then I'll go.
Sure.
Yeah, yeah. So I don't see I don't know. There's not a lot of tight ends here that I would consider to be GPP only plays. I think there's a good chunk of tight ends who can be used for both formats. Another cash game tight end for me though will be Dwayne Allen. You could also make the argument for him to be used in GPPs, but 3,200 this week going up against Detroit. What I've been hearing through beat writers and through Indianapolis and whatnot is that Dwayne Allen is seeing a lot more of the targets in practice. Andrew Luck's just looking in his direction a lot more than he has before. And I don't know, it just looks like to be a prime situation, especially at a near minimum salary.
I agree.
Josh, how you
Um,
feeling about? Oh, you're saying something, Ben?
no. I mean,
Uh,
I figured I would give you a room to breathe and let you go, but one thing I wanted to mention, just in that price range, because you said near minimum, Jared Cook, like he's on DraftKings, he's 2,900. He's the guy there. He's going to be getting looks from Aaron Rodgers and against Jacksonville. I think at 2,900 on DraftKings, you got to kind of just lock that in.
yeah, especially if you're doing a Green Bay stack. We are hearing some news with Green Bay this week that Jordy Nelson is probably not going to get the full not reps, but the plays that he should be getting. So if you do want to stack, possibly Aaron Rodgers with Randall Cobb and Jared Cook, that might sound interesting, possibly for GPPs. Josh, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of talk this week about Cook, and that kind of scares me some that his ownership levels are going to go up. Um, yeah, if Jordy's definitely not going to play, the max, snap wise, I think it's a good play. But with all the talk recently, it does kind of scare me, and I think there's some decent pivots in that price range to go with. I'm getting a little more intrigued with Clive Walford right now. With that game with such a high uh, point total there. I think that's pretty interesting. And also, if you're getting exposure to those Thursday night games to place, the Monday, I really like Vance McDonald and his price. And Gabbert, he's not flashy at all, but that's the type of system that McDonald will do well in there, I feel.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest here, I did not know before I started doing some research, for the football slate here starting last week. I had no idea who some of these guys were at tight end. Like Clive Walford, I had no idea who that was. Um, I don't know, like some of these guys here, I just did not know they existed.
Clive
Um,
Walford's a beast. If you go and look up his highlights, he's an athlete. He's going to be good. The only thing that worries me is they said that Michael Rivera is going to be getting the start, I think, or at least more targets. So I'd have
Well,
to
he's going
wait
to
and see how.
go too.
Right, of course, but if he's getting more, the majority of the snap counts, then that just worries me until I can at least watch some film and see how he was used. So I would really have to. I'd probably get away from that week one personally until I saw what he looked like. But yeah, I mean, it's a great matchup, a very high over under. So he's someone I'm high on coming into the season. And who else did you mention? Who was the other guy? It was.
I mentioned McDonald if you're getting Monday
Oh,
night.
Vance McDonald, right. I think Vance McDonald has actually been getting some talk around the industry. I personally have almost taken a vow to not play any San Francisco players. They've
But
just always disappointed me. I just don't like their offense, and Colin Kaepernick's on their team. So there's a
Of
few
course.
reasons why.
well, it's also with Chip Kelly in that offense what he's done with the places he's gone. He's gotten, I
Yeah.
don't like the coach, but he gets the tight end involved, and the wide receivers in the system, their number one wide receivers have put up, close to career numbers under him. I don't think he's a great coach, but it's something to pay attention to, and it's not a desirable team there at all. But I think that's sneaky upside there with McDonald with the targets he'll probably get peppered with. And I don't know what Hyde's status is for Monday with the concussion either. Do you guys know?
I haven't heard anything
I
about
I
that.
don't I don't think there's anything official on him yet.
I do have one question though with Clive Walford. Now I know you're talking about the athleticism and whatnot, but here's the question: did he play basketball? Because that seems to be the narrative here with tight ends lately,
Uh,
is that they had
Uh,
to have been a college basketball player in order for them to succeed.
I mean, yeah, I mean, it's definitely been proven that some of the best tight ends of all time were former basketball players. So there's definitely some merit to it in the position of blocking out and going up and getting the ball. But I don't know. I'm sure he did. With a name like Clive, he was probably smooth on the court.
I don't know. I'd really like to go in one day and just hear his name being called out by some PA announcer. I don't know. It just sounds like that'd be a really interesting
He's
experience
an
there.
athlete, man. I recommend go watching videos of him.
I
one
But
guy,
certainly.
last guy I'd
I
like to mention, I'm kind of high on Ertz as well, just because, Jordan Matthews there drops passes, things like that. And I think, with rookie quarterbacks, sometimes their safety net is that tight end. So for Wentz, I like the Wentz Ertz connection there. And I think, he can get those end zone targets as well. It's somebody I have a lot of interest in.
I agree. All right, so for me, looking at cash, I like Delaney Walker in a PPR setting. He gets a lot of targets. He does a lot of under routes. But someone who's sticking out to me on at least DraftKings at his price is Kyle Rudolph on the other side of the ball. He's 3,000. I was watching him in the preseason, and he's better than I thought he was. I know he said he likes to stay in and block, and he has no problem with it. But you're gonna have like Sean Hill. I mean, what's it, Sam Bradford there, and he's known for just checking the ball down. So I think that if they can develop any kind of chemistry, all you really need is a touchdown at that price. And I think Kyle Rudolph at 3 grand. I think he's going to be sneaky this weekend in terms of GPP.
Have the Vikings named their quarterback yet? I guess I haven't been very tuned in today, and I'm a Vikings fan, but I haven't had time to look.
Ooh, I'm pretty sure it's going to be Sean Hill week one,
Uh,
and then because they said Sam Bradford still has to like learn the playbook or something probably, but I'm pretty sure it's Sean Hill and then Bradford. If it changes, I'd love to know.
yeah, Sean Hill doesn't have much of an arm, so I could see a lot of dump off type things there or
Yeah.
under routes, things to digs like that. So yeah, he's always someone who could have two touchdown potential. But I've seen a lot of them here in Minnesota that he scares me at times. But it's worth a flyer at that price. So
Absolutely.
exactly. One more guy I do like to talk about here in this spot. Julius Thomas. I know he goes underlooked because there are definitely some other receiving options in Jacksonville, Allen Hurns, Allen Robinson being those guys. But I don't know. I think Julius Thomas can sneak a touchdown in there. And at 3,800, he's certainly very sneaky for tournaments. And I say he's only a tournament play because his production cannot be guaranteed by any stretch. So,
Well, when he's
yeah.
healthy, we know he's good. And Bortles, he proved himself to be a capable quarterback last year. So yeah, I mean, I could definitely see that. One question I have, and this could go for both of you, Evan as a cash question and Josh as a GPP question, but Kobe Fleener, are you gonna eat the chalk?
Yes.
Yes in
Nope.
cash and no in GPP. That's pretty much how it should go for the most part.
I'm not touching him. He came out the other day and said he's still having problems understanding the playbook.
Yeah.
And I compare his hands to kind of Jimmy Kleinsasser back in the Minnesota days. Don't throw it to stone hands. He scares me. You know, he's got beautiful hair, but I need to see more out of him, you know, on the field.
I
I mean, you
agree.
can't fade the hair though,
Yeah.
But I
especially if the
mean, we
hair.
saw that even, Drew Brees can make any tight end look good for the
He
most part.
can,
He
but
made Brandon Watson look good.
when you're, you know, it's not a coach coming out saying he's struggling with the playbook. When you yourself is coming out and saying that, I kind of get a little scared there.
I agree. That at least limits his snap counts just because you can't be out there on every package.
Yep, and that's why he's almost a total fade for me. With looking at things so far, I don't think I have him in any of my lineups, which could obviously burn me, but that's a risk I'm willing to take.
I
Yeah, I
agree.
mean, I do agree with your tournament stance on that. Just because he's chalky, and I don't know, I think there are other places to go tournament-wise when it comes to that price point of tight end. But cash, with the Oakland Raiders narrative from last season, I think that does carry into this season to an extent, not as badly, but for a little bit, I think the Raiders will still struggle against the opposing tight end for at least the first couple games, first couple games into the season. Puberty's getting to me right now. If
But
if you
wouldn't
can hear
you
that.
About time.
maybe want to pivot down to Gates as well? He's, you know, Rivers' average depth of pass isn't as far as it used to be, and I can see some check downs to Gates there. And you know he wants him to get to the touchdown record.
Yeah,
It's
eight
not going to happen right
touchdowns.
away, but I mean, it's a rival there, and I see Kate or San Diego going to be down there, so a lot of dink and dunks to Gates and some to Keenan Allen and Woodhead. I think is
He's old reliable, man.
yeah,
There's your basketball player.
could be a
The
good pivot
narrative.
off of Fleener, and it's a lot. They'll save you 700 in cap too. So
Yeah, definitely. I
Real
mean,
quick before we move on, Evan. Something I just noticed, which pretty crazy to me. I don't know why it didn't stick out to me earlier. The second highest implied team total is Seattle, and no one really been talking about them. You hear a little Michael whisper, you hear a little bit, but I mean Jimmy Graham,
he's not playing.
he's, I mean he's who's his backup? Luke
Yeah,
Luke
Wilson.
Wilson. Luke Wilson.
Is he playing?
He should be if Jimmy is out, which it
Jimmy's
seems
still
to be
out.
the case.
He, yeah, I think whoever's playing at the tight end spot there, at the second highest implied total, and they should get some targets from Russell Wilson on those rollouts. So I think in terms of PPR, if it's Luke Wilson, he kind of reminds me, he's like a Kobe Fleener, like not the best hands in the world, but what price is he at? He's at 2,700 on DraftKings. So GPP wise, I think I'm gonna take a look at that offense in terms of the tight end and see what kind of matchups I can exploit out of that.
Yeah, there's definitely a ton of options to go there for that Seattle Seahawks game.
Yeah, I didn't
Um,
realize their total was so high because they have such a low over under, but they're probably heavy favorites.
One
I would
thing,
imagine.
one thing you could do there is run Wilson, Lockett, and Seattle D because you're getting a double dip there with Lockett returning punts, kicks, things like that. But if with that implied total has gone up, getting exposure to some of those Seattle players right there. I'm not a huge Baldwin fan. I like the potential of Lockett. He's got speed, and I think that's a sneaky combo there, Wilson Lockett. And if I was going to do those two, I would actually pair him with Seattle's D.
Nice. That no one's gonna have that.
Yeah, it'll be very contrarian and definitely something worth looking at for this week. Any final thoughts on the tight end position, guys? I mean, I know there's a ton to talk about, but I know that we've discussed a ton already. But is there I know, any one guy that just stands out to you that we haven't talked about?
Nothing that stands out, but one thing I'd like to mention is Eric Ebron. I think he's practicing in full, and they said he might be available for week one. And I've heard a lot of talk about the offense, but I really haven't heard anyone say Ebron at all because they were expecting him not to play.
Yeah, I mean, at 3,900 against the Colts, who struggle on defense, especially now without Vontae Davis. I think, obviously there'll be a huge domino effect there because of that. Eric Ebron is certainly worth a look. Definitely a guy worth targeting in this game if you do want to pivot off of a guy like Marvin Jones in that receiver, in a possible quarterback receiver tight end stack with Stafford and all them on the Detroit Lions.
Yeah, I think they're all going to go to the wide receivers, and then when they get to like that tight end spot, they're gonna be like, oh, I already have two Detroit wide receivers. I don't want to throw, Ebron in who's been injured or whatever. But he tournament wise, I think I'm gonna look at him. I'm gonna look at Jared Cook, just because of his price. And I like I was saying earlier on a Periscope, I really like to go cheap at tight end. I feel like there's a lot of value that you could find there, especially PPR. So that's why I like looking into these little things like that.
Yeah, definitely some good thoughts there. Josh, any other tight ends that we haven't talked about that you're really on in this week?
No, I mentioned earlier Ertz, and I like Witten, like you said, because it's just a conference matchup. Um, I do like Walker. I do worry that Zimmerman might try to take him out of that game. Uh, can't count on any Giants wideouts or tight ends yet. I don't know if Will Ty or O'Donnell, how that's gonna come out.
You can never trust Giants tight ends.
No.
ASJ kind of is interesting, but man, he could go in there and just be a dud and they yank him. But he's super cheap too, right under Cook and Cook as well and Walford. So that's about as low as I'm going. So
Um,
All
what
right.
about before we go? What about Travis Kelce? What are you guys' thoughts?
uh,
I'm not a huge fan of the play. I can get behind him in tournaments, but I'm not a huge fan of the idea on, in a cash game format.
Think he's too expensive?
Yeah, I think the price is just too high at 5K. I think there's definitely some other options you can go.
Hmm.
Um, Yeah, but other than some tournaments, other like some tournament lineups that I'll sprinkle him in, he for the most part is going to be a fade.
Oh wow, he's a lot more expensive on DraftKings
Mhm.
than he is on FanDuel.
I mean,
and then
if you can get him cheaper on FanDuel, then I wouldn't mind the play for cash. But again, I just can't, I can't get behind him
Right.
and
No, I agree.
yeah,
and as Chad has been saying too, I'm interested a little in Barnage as well. I think he has that potential to, catch six balls, 70, 80 yards, and hopefully a touchdown. So he's interesting too.
Yeah, he can always be considered a GPP play because he's one of those players where it doesn't matter who the quarterback is as long as there's a ball in the air, he can get points.
exactly. Um, Now moving on to just an interesting position, week in, week out. We have the kicker. Um, Definitely some guys worth looking at here. I think my top three kickers. I mean, I never can really organize my kickers into GPPs and cash, just because the volatility is just insane across the board. Um, but my three top kickers here are Mason Crosby, Connor Barth, and Matt Bryant. Um, I don't know. I think Connor Barth. The Saints get themselves into the red zone. a good chunk of the time, and they may not succeed. So I think the field goals might be there. Mason Crosby, same deal. Matt Bryant, I'm a little more hesitant on him, but at the same time, he does have quite a leg on him, and he's playing indoors, so I do like the play there.
Let's see. Well,
I don't play FanDuel, but yeah, I, so I don't know a whole lot about kickers, but I guess guys I would be targeting would be dome kickers. It's not late in the year and weather-wise, but I would pick on that Oakland matchup, Seabass, if he's still in the league and
yeah.
pounds and booting it, somebody I would have interest in. And Tucker from the Ravens is always interesting. So
he's like an automatic 50-yarder per game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think if you're playing on FanDuel, and kicker's probably one of the last spots you want to position, and usually people punt there. It seems like.
I actually I don't punt like purposely when it comes to kicker, but what I do, I like to look at the implied team total, because regardless if there's points being scored, it has to do with the kicker. If you have a touchdown, he gets a point. Even though if it's a team that will score 6 or 7 touchdowns, then yeah, you're kind of out of luck, but at least you're getting at least 5 or 6 points or whatever, which is not great. But you wanna try and look at the teams that are supposed to score a lot but may get stuck in the red zone. So I like the Baltimore play, Justin Tucker, even though that their implied total isn't massive, but he's someone who he has such a big leg. He's always good for a 40 or 50 yarder. You could look at Vinatieri, because I don't think Luck is going to be someone who's going to punch everything in, and Gore certainly isn't going to run 2 in. So Vinatieri's trustworthy, and he'll definitely be able to kick a few in, especially make all the extra points. And one thing I'd like to add is be careful with Chris Boswell on Pittsburgh, because what we've seen since last year is Pittsburgh likes to go for 2 a lot. So just be careful if you see a team that likes to go for 2 and they're not kicking as much. You basically want to avoid that, because you're not going to get those free extra points when they score.
Yeah, it's actually some very good insight there, because I mean there is a lot more that goes into kicker than just picking a random kicker, like a lot of people do. So yeah, there's definitely some some thinking that does go into kicker selection.
Home teams too. Home
Yeah.
teams are usually better for kicking, for whatever reason.
I don't doubt it. I mean, the comfort. I would imagine that there's some more comfort when it comes to that. So yeah, I mean, any other kickers that you're looking at here, Ben? Again, Garrett or yeah, Josh and I here are a lot more into DraftKings, where kicker isn't
Right.
really.
Yeah, I mean, you could always look at someone like Nick Folk. The Jets, they don't have the best punch it in mentality. They'll throw it up to Marshall, they'll throw it up to Decker, but I've been watching them long enough to know when you get in the red zone, it's not guaranteed touchdown for the Jets. So at the minimum price, I love looking at him, and you could also look at Nick Novak from Houston. Those are 2 people I'll be looking at those minimum prices.
All right, yeah, that sounds awesome there. Um, okay, so moving on to our last position here, defense and special teams. I don't know, some of these guys and some of these teams, probably the best cash defense you can have this week is the Seattle defense. I know I was talking about Jarvis Landry before and how much I liked him, but at the same time, I didn't really, none of us really have mentioned anyone else from that Miami Dolphins team. So definitely Seattle defense is the best cash defense in my opinion. And then also the Kansas City defense, I like them a lot tonight in cash. Um, they tend to get a lot of pressure on opposing offenses, and that's something that San Diego might have a hard time stopping.
What do you think, Josh?
one defense I'm pretty interested in is Green Bay on the road. With that spread moving a little, I look for them to try to slow down the ball in the second half and play a little keep away. So I have some interest there. With Lacey, you could do if you're off the Rodgers and Cobb and things like that. Maybe pair Lacey with Green Bay's D. The Eagles for sure versus Cleveland. I think that's a good spot. Minnesota, had watched them for years and they sucked on D, but last year was pretty impressive. I don't mind them at Tennessee, and their price is fairly decent. Giants could be sneaky versus Dallas if they get Dak on the run and force some turnovers there. I think there could be a special teams touchdown. Or a defensive touchdown, and but if you're going all the way up to like your Seattles or your Broncos, you're getting the Thursday night exposure. Maybe you want to pair C.J. Anderson with Broncos D there.
Would you like to explain for some of the newer viewers why it's good to pair a running back with a defense?
Well, I don't always do that, but it's kind of clock management and things like that. If the running back's spending a lot of time in the field trying to playing keep away, they're either getting turnovers or just more potential to get a turnover as well. So I don't always pair a running back with a defense, but in certain situations I will when with the closer point spreads, I guess.
I was waiting for but when I do stack running back and defense. I was waiting for that one. Unfortunately, we didn't get it, but
it'll come eventually for you.
I felt the sentiment.
You heard the setup, but just didn't get the climax. All right, so for me, of course, one of the things I love to do for defense is look at the opposing team's total and try to find the lowest implied, at least in terms of Vegas, and then try to, of course, pick apart myself, but we have Miami, who their implied team total is 16.75, which is pretty awful. That's the lowest of the week. And when you have Seattle, who's been as dominant as they have been, you have Tannehill, who I still don't really have too much confidence in, and I still consider him a wide receiver turned quarterback. But then one team that week in and week out last year always produced for me defensively was Philadelphia. Your hometown, your team, for whatever reason, they still let up a decent amount of points, but they always have like a special teams return touchdown, a defensive return touchdown, a couple of picks, a turnovers, whatever it is, they get their hands on the ball. So that's a team that I like to use often, and for whatever reason, they're just never highly owned.
Yeah, I mean, one of the lone staples of the Chip Kelly era in Philadelphia was that the special teams was always great. I'm not really referring to the the kicking. Our kicking situation was off, but it's whatever. But just in terms of the guys that we had returning the ball, just the way our kick returns and punt returns were set up, they were just set up really well in order to get Darren Sproles, guys like that in there to try to score touchdowns. And they did really well. They've done really well in the past, few years in getting there.
They've spent some money on defense this offseason too, so it can only, get better. So, and especially playing the Browns, there's turnover potential there with our defense. So it's definitely something you want to target. That's why one of the plays I like is pairing Matthews with the Eagles, or going like a four. I know it's crazier, but a four stack with Wentz, Matthews, Ertz, and actually Philly's D.
Oh man, I'm surprised Evan's not blowing kisses at the screen right now.
See, I want to. Don't get me wrong here. I want to, but at the same time,
mind blowing.
Yeah, it is. I'm just shocked that anyone wants to roster the Eagles. I don't know. I just have this weird feeling in my mind that nothing is going to go right for the Eagles, and it's all pessimism. It's not. I don't know. It's the
That's
Eagles are
fine.
an enigma. I tell you.
They are,
I
and it's
agree.
kind of like you have to wait to see it, but it's definitely it could only get better with Chip Kelly out the door. I mean, it's like they didn't play defense at all last year. So
Yeah, well, it's just because Chip Kelly left him out on the field. He was just like, all right, defense. I guess you don't get tired, guys. I know you don't get tired. So I'm just gonna leave you out here. I don't care what my offense does. I'll just leave you guys out here to dry. And that's why they struggle. They used to struggle so much in the Chip Kelly era because they always played the most defensive snaps in the NFL during the Chip Kelly era. And quite frankly, it's just, it didn't turn out to positive results. The guys are tired. They're exhausted.
yeah, yeah, and I think that's just a prime spot to use Philly's defense target, or you can,
Mhm.
like you mentioned earlier, Sproles, because he'll probably get some carries in there too, and pairing Philly's D with Sproles with the special teams side of it.
Yeah, I apologize. I did go on that diatribe about the Eagles defense, but
It's
No,
okay.
it's
I
actually
want
like
to do something real quick before we move on. A little surprise contest. All right, so we're giving away a free month of sheets to one of the viewers who's been listening, and thank you guys for being on. And what the contest I want you to do is Josh, his Twitter name is at Minneapolis Ace, and I want you to find out who was the pitchers that he won the last $100,000 tournament in. I want you to
uh,
name in the chat who was the pitchers that he used in his DK tournament win, his last one, that was $100,000. The first person to type it, both of the names in the chat, will
I
win the free
remember
month.
now, and that was the 24th, so there's a little help there.
And the 24th, August 24th, find out who were the two pitchers on August 24th, and the first person to type them in the chat will win a free month.
I don't even think they combined for 15 points total. I'm pretty sure.
yeah, I just break it when you look at that lineup, Josh. That's just amazing what you did
It's
there.
crazy.
It was all bats, and I think, yeah, that's the one where the sweat became real when Daniel Murphy hit that grand slam, and then my Angels bats just went off. So
That's awesome. So the first person to type it in, Josh, keep an eye on that. Let me know when it pops up with the right answer. And one thing that I wanted to just finish off with, and I think I forgot to mention before when we were talking, but just end off with some just GPP strategy and game theory, and I think that's something we all could learn from Josh. So. Josh, if you could maybe enlighten us a little bit on some game theory thoughts, just in general. I know it's usually better with specifics, but if you have any strategies or anything you could give, that would be great.
I guess this is the week for me to be more contrarian because of the value out there, and I think spending up at quarterback and running back this week is definitely going to be contrarian. That since there's so many chalky, cheap guys, if they don't go off, you're really going to move up the leaderboards quickly. Avoiding Dak or having lower exposure to him. But you don't even have to go all the way up to the top. I think some of these mid-tier quarterbacks are fine as well. But if you're getting exposure to the Thursday night contest, which I encourage people to do, I think Gurley is very expensive, but playing San Fran, he has that 2 to 3 touchdown type of upside this weekend, especially versus San Fran. And it's definitely, people are going to be on Brown as well. You can make both of them work. So yeah, have fun with it. You try different things in order to take down the millionaire maker. You're going to have something a little off the wall and different. So, just try different combinations and have fun. It's a lottery ticket.
Yes, but a lottery ticket I think I can win.
Well, hopefully
Uh,
one of us will take it down. I mean, Josh already has a head start with his couple of wins.
man,
Josh,
that's
in the chat we have a couple of submissions. Who
I
took it down?
handed out a clue, so no one has it right now. So I gave them one clue.
August 24th, guys. At Minneapolis Ace. First person to get it will get the free month.
all right, guys. I guess that'll do it for us. That'll do it for us for this week on Daily Roto Sharks Live NFL edition for week 1. I'm really excited about where this show is going. I love the show we did tonight. I thank Josh a lot for being on the show tonight. He's a busy guy lately, and I'm really appreciative that he took the time to be with us tonight, Josh.
No, thank you for having me on. It's an honor. Thank you.
Yeah,
Anytime.
thanks a
All
lot,
right.
man. We really appreciate it.
All right, guys, that'll do it for us. If we're not winning all the money, I hope you guys do, and good luck in your contest this week.